All right, thank you, Maggie. Thanks for inviting me to come today and talk to all the savvy ladies. Um, Maternity leave is something that women have been dealing with for many years. Women have been in the workforce in considerable numbers for over 60 years in our country. And, you know, we've come a long way, but there's still a lot of progress that could be made about how this is handled by management. And there's some companies who have had some very forward-thinking policies, but there's still a lot women can do to help themselves, because many women worry that taking a maternity leave is going to inevitably hurt their careers, that there'll be confusion, loss of credibility, or a drag on their advancement. But it doesn't have to be the case. And today, I'll be taking you through the ins and outs of creating a maternity leave plan that can reduce stress and bring order and clarity to your maternity leave. I'll be going over how to specifically structure and write your plan, so you'll cover details about before you go out on leave, during and after. You'll learn tips for how to make a request for a flexible return that will increase your likelihood for success. And when we finish going over how to create a great maternity leave plan, I'll give you a bonus. I'll share with you 3 critical strategies on handling your emotions and all the logistics of going back so you can have a successful return to work. Okay, so let's get started. 85% of American women will become mothers by the time they're 45. And so this is the great majority of women in our country. And at the same time, women make up for almost half of the American workforce. So we have a substantial overlap here. Excuse me. If you do the math, 85% of 47% equals 40%. So that means at some point in their life, 4 out of 10 American employees will be pregnant while working. And although progress has been slow, more and more companies are offering paid maternity leave. And those who have access to maternity leave are certainly grateful, but they're also very concerned about how being out for 3 to 6 months will affect them and the company. Studies tell us that many women are anxious about their responsibilities and feel guilty about leaving the team and their boss in a lurch. They also worry that projects are going to stall or fail if they aren't there to finish them. Another major concern is that their coworkers and managers are going to start to think differently about them, that they won't be seen as ambitious or as an integral member of the department. And the scariest prospect is that getting pregnant and having a baby is going to decrease their chances of getting promoted and may even threaten their job security. Unfortunately, these fears are based in reality. It's likely that some people's perceptions of a female employee who becomes pregnant are going to change, because we've got 2 competing ideas about a person's identity, a mother and an employee. So when you think, what are some characteristics of mothers that come to mind? It might be someone who's giving, affectionate, soft, nurturing, and emotional. And then think of, what are some of the characteristics of a good employee? Ambitious, hardworking, intelligent, rational. So there's an obvious conflict with these characteristics. And some coworkers and bosses find it impossible to integrate the 2 and consequently downgrade their estimation of an employee's value. Many women face a mommy penalty for having a baby and taking leave in terms of their career trajectory. And as EEOC statistics tell us, there are still some women who are denied raises, promotions, and have been fired because they've got pregnant and had a baby. So what can you do? So although women have been a significant portion of the workforce for many years, corporate America has been slow to figure out how to deal with the reality of women having babies. But there's a powerful and practical tool that can change a maternity leave from threatening your career to enhancing your career. And that's a detailed maternity leave plan. Instead of a liability, your maternity leave becomes an opportunity to show professionalism, leadership, foresight, and creativity. Today, you're going to learn why a maternity leave plan is critical to your success. what research you need to do, and where are the best sources for that information. And we'll also go over how to negotiate your plan with your manager and HR department. So we'll start with what a maternity leave plan does for you. Americans don't even take their full vacation days for fear that they'll lose a grip on their job. So a 3 to 6 month leave can make you feel like you're in a really precarious situation. Creating a maternity leave plan will give you more control over your work situation by taking the guesswork out of this transition. And if you can do that, you'll be able to relax and focus on you and your baby while you're home rather than worry about work. A maternity leave plan can also impress the boss. He or she will have some anxiety about your leave and how your work is going to be covered. So if you take the initiative on anticipating what's needed, you show yourself to be a strategic thinker who cares about the success of the department while you're out. Some people may feel awkward asking you when you're due or how long of a leave you want to take. Especially in the Me Too era, if your boss is a man, he may feel very cautious about asking you about something so personal that involves your body. So presenting a plan will put all that information out there in black and white. It'll set clear expectations for everyone involved. Within the plan, you'll be providing a list of projects that you'll complete by the time you leave, a list of those that are ongoing, and all of your responsibilities that need to be covered. It's a handy way to show how productive and important to the company you are. So there are a few things you need to do before you actually sit down and write the plan. First, you need to have an initial meeting with your manager, and you need to plan about 15 minutes for this. And first, you've got to let the boss know that you're pregnant. And you definitely want to be the one to tell them. If the boss finds out from someone else, you've lost an opportunity to appear proactive when considering how your leave will affect the company. So before you even tell your friends at work, the boss has to come first. Realize that he or she may be taken by surprise and may be dismayed by the prospect of you being out for a few months, so they may not be enthusiastic at first. Don't take it personally. It's quite likely that they're happy for you on a personal basis, but for the moment, they're only seeing how it's going to impact their ability to get the job done. In this brief meeting, you also want to let your manager know that you'd like to write an explicit maternity leave plan. It'll help them to know that you're taking steps to make sure your essential duties will be covered while you're out. And finally, you want to schedule a meeting for a couple of weeks ahead to discuss elements of the plan. You should plan for an hour or so you have uninterrupted time to flesh out all the issues. The couple of weeks will give you a chance to do all the research you need to do to be prepared. Next, you want to talk to human resources. Get information on company policies, state laws, and federal laws that dictate what the conditions of your leave will be, the length and to what degree you'll be paid. This may be in the employee handbook or it may not. You want to get all the forms that you'll need from them regarding your leave. You want to complete them, send them to all the relevant parties, and keep copies on paper and digitally. You never know when you're going to need them. You want to find out how your benefits will work while you're out on leave. Will your vacation days still accrue? How will your health benefits work? How do you add the baby to your health plan? Is it a phone call, an email, or an official letter? You want that baby covered from the moment she's born, so you need to be sure about how to get it done. A great source of information is other moms in your organization. They are a treasure trove. These are people who've been in your shoes and successfully made the transition from employee to parent-employee. You can find out things that aren't in the employee manual, like how did the boss and their coworkers deal with the maternity leave? You can ask, what's your advice, your best advice to plan this whole thing out? Were you able to negotiate a non-standard return? Were you able to negotiate how your benefits accrued while you were out? And you can ask them that ever useful question, what did you wish you knew before you went out on leave that you know now? Part of your preparation is to decide if you want to make a request for a flexible return schedule. Examples of this include working part-time for your first month, or working from home on Fridays, you want to think carefully before you make this request and figure out what would be the most valuable to you. For right now, though, I want you to put that thought on hold because I'm going to go over specifically how to prepare this kind of proposal later in my presentation, because this should be a separate proposal from the maternity leave plan itself. Okay. So once you've done your research and have your information, it's time to sit down with the boss for that meeting. Like I said, schedule an hour-long meeting so you have plenty of time to discuss, negotiate, and cover all the important issues. At the meeting, you want to be prepared with preliminary info like your due date and your anticipated date of return. You want to include a list of your projects and responsibilities that need to be covered while you're on leave. If a manual of how to handle specific tasks would help, offer to write one. In this meeting, you can also make recommendations for which of your direct reports or colleagues should take over which portion of your work and get the manager's approval. If you think the better plan is to hire someone to replace you, make the case why that is. For example, it could be that you have a particular expertise that no one else has, or considering the current workload of other employees, it just isn't doable for someone to take on your workload. And if you've decided you want to try to negotiate a non-standard return to work, this is the time to do it. You should have this in a separate short proposal memo to leave with the manager so they can think about it and confer with HR or higher-ups if necessary. Once your manager and you have agreed on the details, you write the plan covering what's going to happen before, during, and after your leave. This is a template of a maternity leave plan, and it'll be sent out to you from Savvy Ladies in the next day. It's a good base for you to start with to model your own plan after. It gives you some of the basic questions to ask, some of the basic information that you'll want to include. You can obviously, expand or contract as fits in your situation, but it's just a nice basic place to start. So in the first section, which addresses the time before you leave, you want to include your due date. And I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, but a pregnant woman may have her due date memorized, but other people won't. And people will only kind of have your belly to judge, so it's good to get it down on paper. You also want to include any necessary contingency plans if you deliver considerably early. Here you should cover what's the bare minimum of your responsibilities that need to be covered. You also want to list what projects and tasks you expect to complete in the last 2 months, and feel free to brag about yourself. This is your opportunity to show your value to the company. And you want to include emergency contacts like the phone number of your OBGYN or midwife, or who you want contacted if there's an emergency while you're at work. Now the middle section is the meat of the plan and addresses while you're out on leave. Based on the discussion you had with your manager, here you'll want to document your responsibilities and who will be taking over each of them. Also, if you've written any manuals, say what they cover and where they can be found. Importantly, if you have people who report to you, make it clear who they should go to for supervision while you're gone. This will definitely help them feel like they haven't been left to cope on their own. And you want to state your preferred communication policy while on leave. Federal law says that you're not allowed to have communication while on leave, but at work, I have to say, expectations do seem to vary. So you want to be clear about what you're okay with. If you want radio silence, communicate that. But if you're okay with weekly or monthly contact, write that specifically. Also, you want to document who has your contact information. You don't want to put that on the plan. Everybody doesn't need to know your personal cell phone and be able to contact you. So just the name of the one person who's got your contact information is helpful. Okay. The return section of your plan should include your anticipated return date, and the agreed upon conditions of your return. If you've negotiated a flexible return, include exactly what that entails and any agreements about how long it will last and at what point you'll evaluate how well it's working and potentially adjust. About a month before your due date, when you've completed preparing the plan, submit it to your manager to approve, and if necessary, to HR to get the appropriate signatures. Okay, let me just catch up here. There we go. Okay, and then finally you want to distribute an edited version of your plan to your colleagues and direct reports. You know, it doesn't have to be the complete plan. They don't need to know the phone number of your doctor, just the details that are important for them to know, especially your communication policy and who has your contact info. Then it can be useful to have meetings with people taking over your responsibilities. Give them the background and all they need to succeed. If you have direct reports, let them know your explicit expectations. And I think it's reasonable to present your leave as a growth opportunity. Let them know if they can handle some of your tasks, this will better position them for a future promotion. If a replacement for you is being hired and arrives before you leave, take the time to train them well. If not, then it's doubly important for there to be a written manual of how to take care of your major responsibilities. If necessary, let clients know that you'll be going out on maternity leave. Tell them specifically who will be taking care of them and give them that person's contact information. And if there's time, if it's possible, introduce them to the new person and reassure them that service will remain the same and that they will be able to get in touch with you again when you come back. Letting them know when you will be coming back will help them manage you being gone. People do much better with stressful situations or situations that they can't control if they know how long it's going to last and what exactly is going to happen. So keeping them informed about when you'll be back will reassure them. And then you want to decide if you want remote computer access to the company. And if yes, arrange for that to be set up before you have the baby. Because after you have the baby, the last thing you will want is to have to deal with technicians coming to your house. In those first few weeks, it'll be a major accomplishment if you get out of your pajamas. So better not to have to worry about unexpected visitors. Then finally, leave a printed version of your complete maternity leave plan on your manager's desk and email a digital version. People lose things all the time, and it couldn't hurt for there to be a copy on their desk. So these are the major steps in creating a detailed and effective maternity leave plan. So now I'd like to review how can you make a request for a flexible return that will have the best chance for success. For most companies, this is a new and threatening idea. They've waited, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever your maternity leave is, for you to come back, but now you're suggesting you want to come back on an abbreviated schedule. So it's your job to show them you've thought this through and you've considered the company's needs. One of the most common wishes of women returning from maternity leave is to return with some kind of flexible schedule. However, many women are afraid to ask. I'm here to tell you that you can be certain you won't get an accommodation if you don't ask for it. You cannot hurt yourself if you make the request in a respectful, thoughtful way that considers the company's needs and your own, even if it's never been given to returning employees before you. Are you someone who makes a great contribution and whose work is well valued? Would your boss be very sorry to lose you? Then you may have more leverage than you think. In the current economy, there is a growing shortage of talented workers. Unemployment is below 4%. And while corporations have been hesitant to increase salaries, they have been expanding benefits. And the structure of your return for maternity leave can be one of those benefits. It's very important to be very specific about the changes that you're looking for. It could be part-time, telecommuting, limiting travel. And you want to be clear about the time period you're asking for this accommodation to last. Like I said, people cope better with change when they know what they can expect. If your boss knows you're only asking for a change in schedule for 3 months, then they understand it won't last forever and they can plan for it. I also suggest that you make the request having 3 offers in mind: a best case scenario, a close second, and a bare minimum third. Oop, there we go. Okay. And the reason why I say this is psychologists know that there's a technique to increase the odds of someone giving you what you want, and it's called the door in the face technique, which sounds kind of funny, but bear with me. The first thing you do, you ask for something big, not outlandish, but bigger than is usually considered. And the first possible outcome is that you'll get it, which is great. The second possible outcome is that it will be rejected. That's the getting the door in the face. But, and this is a big but, when a person refuses a first request, they're much more likely to approve a second, smaller request. This is because, by and large, people are uncomfortable saying no, especially to those they like and respect. After saying no once, they feel like they owe the person making the request. Saying yes to something, even a slightly smaller something, eases that discomfort. So I recommend having a primary and secondary request, and just in case both fail, having a bare minimum third. And these are some examples of that. Coming back at 3/4 times for 2 months, reducing that to just 1 month. And if both of those things are rejected, you can ask, well, if I need to travel, can the company cover the cost of shipping breast milk from business trips? And in your proposal, you want to show exactly how you'll be able to get your work done with the modified schedule. You make your case for how this will impact the company goals in a minimal way, and you show your willingness to be flexible. For example, you might offer on days that you leave early, say that you only work 6 hours rather than 8 hours. You commit to spending 20 minutes at night checking in and responding to urgent emails. So that's one way to know if there's some anxiety from management or from colleagues that there will be this kind of final end of the day touch point with you. You also want to demonstrate to your boss that you're really thinking critically about this plan. And one way you can do that is by anticipating possible problems. Show how you'll avoid these problems or why they won't impact productivity. This is an opportunity to show how you understand and have considered the complex workings of the organization. That this is not only a good plan for you, but it's good for the company. You also want to provide examples, either within your company or outside. There are plenty of examples of employers giving employees greater flexibility when they return from maternity leave and the positive effect it has on employee productivity. You can look for articles in Forbes magazine or Harvard Business Review or your particular industry's magazine for examples of success stories with these kinds of accommodations. For example, Amazon has offered 8 weeks of flexible or reduced work hours when returning from maternity leave, and Spotify offers 1 month of flexible hours. You want to show that you've done your research, you're not acting on a whim or looking for something outlandish. And if this is something new for your company, you might want to suggest a trial run. If you're asking for a 3-month change in schedule, offer to try it out for 1 month and then regroup with your manager and evaluate what's going well and what isn't. You want to demonstrate your willingness to make sure that this change isn't going to hurt the goals of the company. And finally, you want your employer to know that there's strong evidence that women are more likely to go back to work and stay working if they're able to come back from maternity leave with a flexible work schedule. This is a huge advantage for any organization because recruiting, hiring, training new employees to replace those lost due to motherhood can cost up to 20% of an employee's yearly salary. Flexible work arrangements after maternity leave are also linked to higher feelings of balance and job satisfaction, as well as a higher likelihood of being promoted. Overall, firms have a lot to gain by giving employees a flexible return, and you want to be sure that they know it. Okay, so what if it is absolutely clear that no accommodation like this is going to be made? What can you do to help your transition back? So then you can ask for something small but useful. One example might be asking to come back on a Wednesday or a Thursday, your first week return from maternity leave. Because coming back from maternity leave on a Monday is taking on a lot. If you can come back on a Thursday, you only have 2 days to get through, and you'll quickly see if there are adjustments to your plan that need to be made. Like, you can't get the baby's diaper bag packed in the morning. You need to do it the night before. Then before you have to face a whole week of living this new life you've got, you'll have time to make changes and be better prepared and won't have to go through a whole week of logistical chaos. Going back just for 2 days will also help you to cope with any emotional fallout you have from your return. Some moms go back to work feeling happy and ready to focus on their work, but some are overwhelmed by sadness about leaving their child. Whatever it'll be, knowing you only have to do it for 2 days will be easier than having a whole week looming ahead of you. So preparing a detailed maternity leave plan can give you control over the process and help management and colleagues have reasonable and specific expectations of how the work will get done while you're out. It makes you look prepared, proactive, and committed to the organization. The ultimate purpose is to position you for a strong return to work with a reputation for leadership, accountability, and collegiality. Okay, so now there are a few things that you can do upon your return to ensure that your plan will be a success in all of these ways. And the first is to meet with your boss 2 weeks before you come back. You should be able to arrange maybe a coffee, some kind of meeting outside of work. And this will give you the opportunity to reconnect and show you are ready to come back. You'll be able to get caught up on any major changes with personnel, policies, or clients that took place while you were out. You might also want to call a friendly colleague and ask them for the latest scoop to get the unofficial version of what's been going on. Second, when you come back to work, you want to thank coworkers publicly and privately, especially your direct reports. Think about bringing in muffins or bagels to say thank you. Everybody likes food. People really appreciate having their work acknowledged publicly. They will know you didn't take them for granted, and that you realize they did something above and beyond their duties to keep the organization humming while you were able to take time with your baby. For your direct reports, acknowledge any new skills or leadership they took on while you were out, and tell them you're excited to see how they've advanced their development. If they had some difficulties, apologize and ask what you can do now to right the ship. Thanking people is important, but you want to remember that there may be some people who resent you for having taken the leave and giving them extra work to do. So here are a few strategies for limiting that resentment. The first is reciprocity. Ideally, before you've gone out on maternity leave, you made it a practice to cover for colleagues who needed it, and they've done it for you. If not, definitely do what you can for people in consideration of their needs. Everyone wants to be treated fairly. And even though as a new parent, your schedule is probably pretty tight when you come back, you want to make sure you take the opportunity to do any small favors you can for people at work. Reciprocity gives people a sense of fairness and consideration. Second, give them respect. Don't act like caring for your kids is the only important responsibility that might require someone to leave work early. People have all kinds of responsibilities that require them to leave, like taking care of ailing parents or partners, or it could be getting to class for a master's degree. So make sure you don't act superior about the importance of caring for your children. And finally, transparency. If HR and your manager have agreed for you to leave at 3:30 and work for a couple of hours in the evening from home, don't let colleagues think you're cheating or getting away with something. You want to be upfront about what you're doing and how you're still getting your work done. Transparency sets a much better tone than resentful gossip. So today I've shared with you a comprehensive guide to creating a maternity leave plan that will reduce yours and your boss's anxiety about maternity leave by highlighting your ability to plan, anticipate, and act on the needs of your position at work. You've got a template that will get you started and allows you to adapt it to your specific situation. And you've also learned the ways that you can increase the likelihood that your plan will do what it's supposed to by getting you plugged back in and showing gratitude and respect to your coworkers. So as promised, I want to share with you 3 bonus tips from my Back to Business webinar series for returning parents that will make returning to work run all that more smoothly. And these focus on the emotions and logistics that you'll have to deal with as a returning parent. The first is practice, practice, practice. The week before you return, make believe you're going to work. Do what you need to do to get yourself and the baby ready for the day and leave. If you're using daycare, you've got to have the baby all packed up and yourself all dressed with 2 of the same shoes on. So you want to practice that a couple of times. And most daycares have a breaking in week where your baby goes for 2 hours one day and then increases the hours every single day. So this is a perfect time for you to practice your routine of getting out of the house successfully. Then reassess. Did you get out on time? Did you look presentable? Did you have 5 minutes to review things with your child care provider? If not, look at where you can cut something, what has to be done the night before, or what has to be ditched. The second strategy that helps returning to work from a maternity leave when you've now got the responsibility of a child is to prepare an emergency child care plan for when your child gets sick, or if you have a nanny, she gets sick and you have no coverage. This is going to happen. It's not a question of if, but when. And if it happens and you're completely unprepared, it can be a disaster. It can really stress you out, and it can really certainly have an impact on your day and your productivity. So having a backup plan already set up can be a huge help. So let's take a look at the different options. The first is to see if your employer provides sick daycare. Some do, with a nurse on staff to look after your child. If your company provides this, that is fantastic. Good for you. You will be able to look in on your baby during lunch or a break. There are also a few daycare centers that are similar. They are sick daycare centers for the same purpose. And what you want to do is check them out. If they exist anywhere between your home and work, that could work for you. And you want to check them out with the same kind of diligence that you would use in checking out any kind of daycare beforehand. Another option is a retired grandparent. If you have one nearby, they're one of the few people on the planet who will not mind that your baby is sick and will still want to be of help. I remember when my daughter was young, she woke up with a sore throat and a fever. I was a professor at the time. I had to teach class at 10 o'clock, and my husband had clients coming in at 9:30. We were stuck between a rock and a hard place. But my father had recently retired. I called him and said, "Dad, can you come over and take care of Caroline and take her to the doctor to see if she has strep throat, and then take her to the pharmacy to get the meds if she does?" I knew I was asking a lot, but he quickly answered, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. What a relief. I have to say, it was the greatest. So if you have doting grandparents around, I encourage you to use them shamelessly in an emergency like this. Another possibility is a friend who's a stay-at-home mom. If someone like this is available, make sure you barter something and don't take advantage. Stay-at-home moms can be understandably touchy if a working mom assumes she has the time and interest in watching her kid. Give her a voucher for 2 nights out that you'll watch her baby, or offer to pay whatever she is most comfortable with. And you can also try some creative approaches. I know one woman who she found a couple of college girls who were nearby who did part-time babysitting, and they agreed to occasionally be available for emergency sick child care. So that's how to deal with and plan for and be prepared for when your child or your nanny gets sick. The third bonus strategy I have to make a woman's return from maternity leave more successful is to let go of the guilt. Most new mothers who go back to work struggle with guilt, and one way to let go is to think about the many benefits you bring to yourself and your family by being a working mother. The obvious benefit of being employed that a lot of working mothers don't give themselves enough credit for is that their income makes so many things possible for their children and their partner. Your income helps to cover the basics like paying for food, health insurance, the mortgage, and extras like vacations or sending your spouse to that graduate program they've been wanting to go to. Another reason you may be going back to work is because you're invested in your career and have achievement needs. This is a normal need for all human beings, not just men. Being able to satisfy those needs is important to our self-esteem and adult psychological development. And a mentally healthy mom is a better mom. And finally, pursuing a career has tangible benefits for our children. Daughters of women who work are more likely to have a career and earn higher income when they grow up. And a daughter who has her own money has freedom. The freedom to live her life in a way that works for her. The freedom to stay in relationships because she wants to stay in them, not because she's financially dependent. So setting up our daughters to have more financial stability in their lives is a really powerful plus for daughters of working moms. And as far as sons go, a working mother gives a son a model of womanhood that's complex and multifaceted. He sees his mother as warm and nurturing, but also as someone who's intelligent and successful in the outside world. And when he grows up, he'll be more likely to share in domestic responsibilities with his partner. So that is a huge plus. So you've seen that you can have a lot of control over how your maternity leave will be experienced for your boss, your coworkers, and yourself if you prepare a detailed maternity leave plan. It will reduce the worries you have about how your maternity leave will affect you and your company. You will show yourself to be a responsible, accountable leader. You'll take some of the stress out of your boss's life. And you'll be doing your absolute best to make sure your work will get covered. And it will firmly show your commitment to your company. So there's a lot of evidence that a maternity leave doesn't have to be a time of chaos and doubt, but that it truly can be an opportunity for leadership and growth if planned and executed with forethought and intention. So that is my presentation for today. And I can tell you that as a postpartum consultant and coach, I am passionate about helping women negotiate working motherhood successfully. I do that through workshops, videos, and one-on-one coaching. And this year my business has expanded to consulting with managers on best practices for managing and expecting returning employees. So if you or your firm could use some assistance with this transition, please feel free to contact me at the email or phone number that's on your screen. So thank you so much for your attention today, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Dr. DeLuca. That was great. I'll remind everyone, if you have a question, you can use the chat box or you can email info@savvyladies.org. And we do have some questions for you. So this first one is saying that I have a good and friendly relationship with my boss and colleagues. I'm a little worried that if I say it's okay to be contacted weekly so that I can stay in the loop, they might take advantage of it and email or text or call too much. So if I say that weekly contact is okay, but then it turns out to be too much, how would I update my maternity leave plan or reach out to them and request less contact?
Well, that's a great question because, like I said, there is a lot of variability in what managers are expecting. And also, a lot of women do want to stay connected and stay in the know of what's going on. And what I would recommend here is starting out with less contact rather than more. It's always easier to increase rather than decrease. So I'd suggest putting in your plan that monthly phone calls or even bi-weekly phone calls are okay with you. And then if you find that that's perfectly okay and that you could manage more, you can let them know that, and they'll be happy to know they're in more contact with you. But if those bi-weekly or monthly phone calls are clearly enough for you, then you can keep it that way. So I would maybe start out with them having expectations of fewer phone calls rather than more.
Okay, great. Thank you. And another question for you is, my sister never went back to work after having her first child. I'm feeling very anxious that my maternity leave won't be long enough for me, and I'll want to stay home with my baby until she's a little older and maybe even in school. I'm wondering what you recommend for women who really aren't sure if maternity leave will turn into a long gap in employment history.
Well, that's a great question. And the reason why that's so important is it is hard to know how you're going to feel. And I recommend setting up, if you feel like, well, I think I want to go back, but I'm not sure what it's going to be like when I've got that baby in my hands, to plan to return, because that's your right to plan to return. So because it would be much harder to undo if you said to your job, you know what, I'm going to have this baby and I'm quitting. It's over. So because it is your right to have a maternity leave and to return, I would put those pieces in place. And then the closer that you get to your return date, you want to do a lot of soul searching of what would make you happy, what's financially feasible, how would this affect your career. Sort some of that out. And if it's different than what you agreed to, then you can go to management and talk about either looking for some different options that, yeah, I would like to come back, but I'm definitely not interested in full-time work. Maybe I only want to work half-time. Or it could be that working from home would work for you. Or if you decide, you know what, this is where I want to be and I want to be home for another 6 months, you should let them know as soon as you feel sure about that. And, I'm not sure if most companies would be okay with that kind of a leave, but you can always ask. Asking never hurts. But I say definitely protect yourself by having a return in place, and then you can always adjust that depending on where you feel when the time comes.
All right. Okay. Thank you. And I believe this is the last question for you, which is saying that I just got promoted to a new role and my husband and I are trying for our second child. How would my maternity plan need to be adapted from what you talked about today, since I'm in a new role and still getting adjusted to it?
That does complicate it. So, you want to think about, if first of all, you're not pregnant yet, so you have quite a bit of time to acclimate, to take on your new responsibilities. So it's not as if you're going out tomorrow on leave. So you do have a lot of time to settle into your relationships with the team that you're working with. And, it's up to you when you decide to let them know that you will be going out once you are pregnant. So I would say use the time that you have to settle in and really get used to what your new situation is, and get yourself set up so that you can thrive, that you can do well. And then when the time comes, again, that is your right as an employee to have a maternity leave when you're pregnant. and you can, have a plan laid out. If there are some pieces of the job that you haven't mastered yet, that can be part of your plan. Okay, by the time I leave, I want to have A, B, and C down, and I expect that when I come back, I'm going to focus on D, E, and F. So again, you are far thinking, you're having vision about your place in the company, your commitment there, and that you're still excited to keep moving in this new position, but there's this reality of another baby. And so this is going to happen, but this is how I'm focused on things for when I come back.
Okay. Do you have time for one last question that just came in?
Sure,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Great, thanks. The question is, should I apply for a more professionally advanced position while I'm on maternity leave and then tell prospective employer to wait 6 months? I feel I'm passing up so many professional opportunities due to my 6-month maternity leave. I'm only 5 months pregnant now.
Okay, so if I'm understanding right, this person is 5 months pregnant and not employed at the moment, but is applying for jobs?
I believe so.
Okay. You know what? I think in this economy, you could still be okay. That you could go into an interview, and if they want you, you can begin and let them know. Okay, I'm committed to this company. I'm excited about starting here, but here's the date when I will be going out on leave, and go from there. I mean, I think that highly qualified people they're coming at such a premium right now that you may have that kind of leverage.
Okay. All right. Well, those are the questions we have. So I want to thank you again, Dr. DeLuca, for a really great presentation. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you didn't have a chance to write down the contact information here, we'll be sending it out along with some worksheets. Is that right, Dr. DeLuca? We'll be sending out some worksheets and templates for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll send those out to everyone soon. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And thank you so much, Dr. DeLuca.
It was my pleasure.
Thanks. Bye-bye.